Well, hello and welcome to the Modern Homesteading Podcast. We're your hosts, Harold and Rachel. Glad you're joining us today. And do you have a good week on the homestead this week, Rachel?
I did. It's been pretty busy.
Having those cooler nights? Probably, I like cooler nights, so you probably enjoying that up there, huh?
Personally, I do, but my pepper plants are not
Pepper
liking it.
plants don't like it.
Yeah, I'm really liking the cooler nights. We're liking that our electric bill's going down.
Yeah, yeah. I love the fall temperatures. I love that transition. I love hoodie weather. I love putting on the hoodie and working outside. But the idea of just knowing what's around the corner, oh man, that upsets me a little bit.
Yeah, winter. I'm actually looking forward to winter a little bit this year. It's been a very busy summer, so I'm looking toward
Yeah,
the break. Yeah.
it's been a very busy year in our garden, and I'm kind of tired from it. Like the harvesting this year and the putting things up has been rough.
Yeah.
Uh, I finally picked a bunch of those butternut squash today, so those are done. So I'll be making some butternut squash soup, and that's my favorite soup. I love butternut squash soup. You ever had it?
Yes, there
Yeah.
was somewhere I had a recipe from a chef that was shared in our local newspaper.
Mm-hmm.
I think I may have lost it, but it was so good.
Yeah, it's my
Roasted
favorite.
it
I just
first.
love it because it's got that consistency of like tomato soup, but it's just got that
Yeah.
totally different
Yeah.
flavor. I love it. It's my favorite. But yeah, got a bunch of elderberry syrup done last few
Oh,
days and got some grape jelly put up. So had some.
so your grapes are ready. I
Yeah,
guess
matter
you
of
guys
fact,
are like,
they were falling off the vine. They were so ready.
I guess
So
you guys are ahead of us because grapes are not, I don't have any grapes per se. My
yeah.
grape bushes or my grapevines are brand new this year, but
Oh, really? Yeah.
yeah, like this is my first
Mine's.
year.
You know what's funny is I have one grape vine that's I cut it back partially every year, and it's probably over 30 feet where it spreads
Oh,
out. I have it. It goes. I have
wow.
an arbor, and it goes over my shed on one side, and then this on when it goes out the other side, it goes over. I have a trellis over a gate, over my back gate, and it actually goes over the gate, down that trellis, and then down my fence. So I get grapes all the way across there, and when I go out my back gate. I actually walk under the grapes hanging down. It's kind of cool.
Maybe I overdid it when I did 4.
No, well, it's probably safer, but this one's really established. I put it in, oh wow, probably 9 or 10 years ago, and it's got a trunk
Okay.
that's probably, I don't know, a foot in diameter. It's huge. Yeah,
What kind is it? Is it Concord?
it's Concord. Yep, and yeah, so it's got the seeds, but it's great. It's great for jelly and jams and
I
things like
actually kind of like the seeds. They're kind of, I don't know. Are you eating a grape unless it has a seed?
that. Well, they're not as good for like just snacking
Right,
grapes,
right.
but for making jellies and jams and things,
Oh,
they're perfect. Yeah.
they're amazing.
It makes great jelly. But yeah, that's
Yes,
what's
it
been going
does.
on here. But
I made ketchup today for my first time.
oh, really? Oh,
Yeah, it turned out so good that I think I might have. I'm like thinking about how I'm gonna propagate these peppers to keep them longer, and I might have to dig them up and bring them inside because I put peppers in it.
oh, and your ketchup?
Yeah,
Oh, I've
not
never.
many. It was I did some of my red tomatoes, some of my orange tomatoes,
Hmm.
banana peppers, and red onions from the garden. And I added a secret ingredient,
A secret
sheep
ingredient.
sheep
Wow.
sorrel.
Well, it's not
Am I
secret
saying
now.
that right? Is it sorrel or sorrel?
I say sorrel, but I
Yeah,
don't
whatever.
pronounce a lot of things right. So
I added sheep sorrel, and my daughter said that is amazing. So, anyways,
hmm,
I got the recipe. I wrote it all down so I could repeat it, and
interesting.
I'll have to share it.
Yeah, when we make it, it's just straight up tomato. I don't put nothing else in it
Oh,
really,
this has
other than
got
just
vinegar and a little bit of obviously vinegar and sugar in it, but it
yeah.
is. I roasted the tomatoes too, so
Oh wow. So you went all
yeah.
out on this. So make a big batch or
Well,
it's trial batch.
I quartered the batch that was in my canning book and then added a couple of things just because I wanted us to eat it. Because
Yeah,
sometimes when I've made stuff before when we canned them and then nobody really liked it and
well,
it was
now,
a lot of
now you
waste.
know what you got to do, right? Since you mentioned it on the podcast, you're gonna have to send that recipe here so I can
Yeah,
put it in the show notes. Otherwise, a bunch of people are going to just send emails wanting
I
the
know,
recipe.
I know.
So you might as well give it to me.
I know. Yeah, so it was really good. In fact, my daughter put it on her I made bread last night and so she put it on her grilled cheese.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
we make some basic stuff like that, but everything, I'm one of them just like meat and potato basic people. I just don't like anything fancy. So it's like, everything's kind of plain,
Right.
and I, I, I don't know. I don't get
We're
overly carried
usually
away.
that way, but I have so many tomatoes this year that I didn't know what to do with them. So I'm like, well, I
So
was like,
I've got a
whatever.
fair amount of tomatoes and tons of peppers, and you got lots of tomatoes and
No, we
hardly
need
any
to switch
peppers.
because my
So yeah.
peppers, it's this the cold nights, I think.
Yeah.
They're just really not liking it. And I bought these special Texas bird hot peppers and then paprika peppers because we love
Hmm.
smoked paprika. And they both like heat. So I might have to dig them up, bring them inside, and put them
You,
under some heat.
I almost wonder if you don't need to make some kind of a box, a window box or something to put around
Yeah.
your pepper plants where you live to get the most out of them, maybe.
Yeah. Normally I don't have issues, but this year I kind of got a late start in the garden. It was a
Hmm.
crazy May for with work for me, so everything got in a little bit late, and I'm paying for it with
That
the
that's
peppers.
where a small greenhouse probably would do you good, because you could actually grow them right in the floor of the greenhouse,
That's
just
true.
like
That's true.
my little greenhouse. I got the raised beds on each side, and I will plant tomatoes and peppers right in the ground inside the greenhouse,
I
and
would love that. That would be
I bet your
amazing.
peppers would
And yours
do really
is
good.
yours glass or is it just the special plastic?
It's
Yours
plastic.
is like
Yeah,
hard
it's a
stuff,
hard plastic. It's some kind of composite plastic, but
right?
I mean, it's several years old now, and
It looks so pretty too. It
it's never
doesn't look
faded,
like
and it holds up. I mean, I've banged into it. I've had grandson throwing baseballs at it and
right,
everything else, and it's
exactly.
never broke or
And
anything. So,
that's what scares me about the plastic because we live with trees,
hmm.
number one. And number two, yours just looks appealing, where the polytunnels, they're not pretty.
No, they're not. And like I said, it's the stuff when you first touch it, it feels like it's you know those plastic like tops that go on like the aluminum pans that for like cakes and
Oh,
things,
yeah.
it almost feels like that, but it's thicker. But it's
Huh.
like, but you can bang on it and it sounds about like that when you bang on it. So when I first put it up, I was like, this is never going to last. But I've had it, what, like, I don't know, 6 years now or something, 5 or 6 years.
So did
And
you get that locally or did you have to order that?
no, I ordered it. I can't remember the company. You can get them on Amazon, but they're pretty expensive, really.
I know they are.
I can't remember the name, the brand of it.
It's
If
on
I
my
think of it, I'll
it's
put it
on
on.
my big wish list. Like,
Yeah,
no.
it's a kind of expensive, but like you said,
Maybe
I
one of
don't
my
like.
big birthdays.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the, like the hoop house
Yeah,
look.
they're
And if
not pretty.
if I had a
Yeah.
lot of land and could stick it in the back 40 somewhere, it wouldn't bother me. But when you're living in the urban homestead and you got
Yeah.
neighbors, you want to keep it looking as nice as
Well,
possible.
even here, even out at our rural property, um, we have the trees. And then up here, a lot of people have to have the Gothic style ones because of
Mm.
the snow.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And even then, you still have to go out and really take care of them. So I think something more like what you have
Yeah,
would
it
work
seems to work
better.
well. And the snow seems to slide off of it pretty good. I've never had a lot of buildup of snow on top of it or anything. So
A worthy investment I'll have to save for.
maybe I could get more use out of it than I do. The first couple of years I used it year round, and now I've kind of like, I use it certain parts of the year for certain
I
things.
remember
But
seeing pictures of
oh
it.
yeah, the
Yep.
first couple of years I heated it and I stayed out there all winter. I mean, I'm out there growing lettuce in the middle of winter in it and stuff, and but that gets expensive, so I quit doing that.
Yeah. Put your hammock out there and a little banana tree
Let me
and
tell you, I spent a lot of time in there in the winter. It was just good for my mental health more than anything, I think.
right, exactly. That
Because
something about it.
I was surrounded by green. I even had cherry tomatoes. It was like 10 degrees outside and I had cherry tomatoes growing in there. That's how
Oh, wow.
I had it
That's
really
cool.
surrounded myself in green. It's nice being in January or February and having that happen. It's just a good
Yeah,
feeling.
January and February here, I don't know about where you're at, but by that time the lakes have cooled down and it is just brutally cold.
Mm-hmm.
And usually January and February we don't see the sun. Like we go for like 2 months and no sun, all
Yeah.
clouds. And it's just
Yeah.
like,
It's
get me
depressing.
out of
I
here.
know it. It's horrible. Yeah. I'm with you.
Yep.
Well, I think we just jump into our topic here. Last week we talked
Okay.
about raised bed. We talked about garden beds and taking care of them after the harvest, what to do with them and how to prepare them. But we didn't go into the other things like trees and vines and your like raspberry and blackberry canes and your bushes and things like that. And there's some things to do with those too in the fall, kind of prepare them for winter, maybe prepare them for the next year, just to kind of get things tidied up after the harvest again. Um, I feel like I was thinking about this today, and we've almost skipped a few things. Like we probably should have talked about like harvesting the fruits and the berries and things like
Oh,
that, and got into some of that
yeah,
because we're kind of jumping forward a little bit. We come
we are.
back, and it's good to have it out there. So if you aren't there yet, you can come back and listen to this episode later if you need some to be, if somebody's
Right.
listening to it and wants to come back to it later and listen to it again. Because for a lot of people, they're not there yet. But for like you're getting really close to that. You're just a few weeks away from tidying things up and getting things ready for winter. I'm just
Um,
I'm just 3 or 4 weeks after you, really.
I'm 4 weeks from our first
Yeah. Yeah.
usual
So,
crop.
and I'm
Yeah.
probably, 3 weeks after, later than you probably on some of that. So, I mean, it's coming up pretty quick. So it's not
Mhm.
necessarily the wrong time to do it, but there are still a lot of people harvesting their apples and their
Right.
pears and peaches and all that stuff. So, I mean, it's not for everybody right now, but we're thinking about it because it's getting close for us. But, but there are some things you can do. And I think we'll just break it down and just take on first, we'll start with trees and then go to vines. And then we'll think about our canes and then our bushes and just kind of work around the property, so to speak, taking care of these different things and what you have to do to them. So when you first start with trees, the first thing I think about when I think, okay, it's time to get these trees ready for winter, I think about mulch. I think it's time to get down a nice thick layer of mulch around those trees, kind of insulate the ground and just help with the moisture retention, really help with that because that's important because they're not getting as much water in the fall. They're going to need to retain that moisture. So they need some mulch, really for, it depends. Like if you got trees around, younger trees really need it. More established trees who've got their roots down really deep don't need it really necessarily. But I have a lot of young trees and those trees really need a good layer of mulch. Do you find that you're needing to do that to your trees?
I definitely need to do that because the orchard at my house or at our property is brand new. And
Hmm.
so we're working on that this weekend, the mulch down around those because we actually have had a mulch shortage here.
Yeah.
So
Well,
we're
we can talk
actually
about
going to
that.
be
Yeah.
cutting down some little saplings and making some because we do have a small chipper.
Well, and even if you
Yeah,
can't get wood chips, I mean, there's some other
right,
options for mulch. I mean, you can use straw, you can use leaves, you can pile up the leaves, as long as you don't have a lot of wind and stuff going to remove them, but you can really get those leaves piled up around, especially more in a rural area like where you are with your other property. You could just pull up the leaves or
right.
cut the grass and pile it up. You could do a lot of things to get the mulch
That's what we've
layer.
been doing right now
Yeah.
is using grass.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think it works really, really well, and you can just make a big mound around that, around your trees of something like that, and it would work really good too. Now I'm transitioning with a lot of my trees into a living mulch. Like I did this as an experiment with my pear trees a few years ago, and it's worked perfectly every year. And those trees are the healthiest trees on my property, and I planted comfrey around them, and
Yeah.
I didn't even put a lot. I think I dropped 2 crowns,
Hmm.
one on each side of the tree, but it has formed a circle around the tree. And so all summer, it works as this living mulch that
Yep.
just kind of covers the ground, keeps the ground cool. And then what it does in the fall, it's really neat what it does. I usually stop cutting the mulch. Like I'll pull the leaves, cut the leaves, use them for chop and drop throughout my garden throughout the summer. But about this time of the year, August, I stop cutting those plants and I let them get as big and bushy as they want. And then as they start dying back, they actually lay over all the way
Yeah.
around the tree and they make this nice big mound of comfrey mulch all around the tree. And then I just leave it there. And then next spring, it just comes back. It starts
Yeah.
growing
At
up through that.
home, the three fruit trees we have here, we have done the same thing with the comfrey.
Hmm.
And the other nice thing is that for us, my comfrey attracts so many bees.
Yeah.
So when it comes to needing the tree pollinated and stuff, it's great.
Yep.
But
Yeah. It has a lot of benefits.
how tall does your comfrey get? Because mine obviously is the kind of the bag kind.
Yeah. You got the common comfrey.
Yeah, mine
How
gets
tall does
quite
it get?
tall. Yeah, mine gets
Uh,
quite tall.
3.5 feet, maybe.
Okay, mine gets about that.
Yeah, if I let it go completely. Like I said, I'm always pulling
Right.
it, doing chop and
Yeah.
drop. But yeah, I usually let it go, and then about the time, like I said, it starts dying. It's good and tall, and it just lays over, and it makes
Yep.
a nice size mound all the way around that tree, and creates a really nice mulch pile. And
Mm.
so I don't worry about those trees, and it's just so low maintenance. It's giving you the chop and drop through the summer. It's a great alternative to going and buying mulch. Like you said, there's
Yes.
a shortage. And with comfrey, it's a one-time deal.
Yeah, at
Now,
least where we are, there has been. We have had, it depends on where you're at, where all that stuff is,
yeah, and with some of my trees, I'm actually creating more uh, guilds that are, a little bit more of a variety, you know.
Yeah.
And with those pear trees, I didn't, because the comfrey will tie up that space. So
Right.
you can, you kind of gauge it, what trees you want to do that with, what trees you don't. The pear trees, it works out good because they're beside my house, and I'm not building a big massive guild of stuff around it
Right.
anyway. Um, but if you're wanting to do more of a permaculture guild and have all the layers, the comfrey's fine, but you got to kind of plan that out and how you're placing it, and leave gaps where you can get other things in there growing.
Yeah.
So you got to kind of consider that. But
Yeah,
I love that option.
I'm looking into doing that, and our orchard
Mm-hmm.
is adding guilds between. It's just
Yep.
was one more thing. Yeah, it was one of those things we just didn't get to this year, but
Yeah.
next year we left space and planning for
And
that.
you definitely want to do it little bits at a time, because it can get overwhelming, but if you can plan
Yeah.
them out and just kind of do different ones,
Right.
do different experiments at different trees. And now when it comes to the mulch, I did want to mention though, when you're putting mulch around trees, it's important that you pull the mulch away from the tree,
Yes.
because for a few things. For one, it will hold moisture on the trunk of that tree, and it can cause rot. It can also invite pests and just varmints and things to work through that mulch and get to your tree trunk, and actually cause a lot of issues there. They'll eat the tree basically, and
Right.
rodents are really bad about that. So it's best, what it works best is if you pull that mulch. And I even do that with my living mulch. Like when it does lay over, I'll come out and kind of pull it away from the tree. So it's a few inches, 4 or 5 inches at least away from that trunk,
Okay.
all the way around. And so it's important to do that, because it can cause a lot of issues, especially if you've got a lot of mice issue and things. If you're out in the field or whatever, it can definitely, they will eat
We've
the
had
bark of the
issues
tree.
here, not on our fruit trees, but on other bushes. They've just completely
Yeah.
killed them.
And that's just for the mice and stuff. Now you got another problem with like rabbits and things that will eat a little bit higher up. They'll go above the mulch and eat. So there's some things you can do with that. You can this is a good time to think about that, because the pressure on that gets heavier in the winter, because of course
Yes.
the food shortages. So they're going to looking for bark to eat and things like that. So you can wrap a tree, and it helps. And the wrap actually does a couple things. You can buy burlap wrap, which is more organic. You can buy other commercial wraps, and it will deter pests, mice, rabbits, things like that a little bit, but it also insulates the tree down low and protects the bark if you got a lot of frost and stuff, because you can actually get frost cracks and things, especially
Yeah.
where you live.
Yeah.
It's a big
And the
issue.
sun too, it will heat up
Sun, yep,
the
you can.
bark on one side. I forgot
Mhm.
what they call it.
Yeah,
But
they're like sun scalding the trees
yeah,
and
that's what
things.
it is.
Yeah.
Sun scald.
And
Yeah.
and it'll protect it year round. You can use it year round. I here it is not a big of an issue, but yeah, some places it's a big issue. Now you can do some DIY things. You can take burlap sacks,
Yeah.
if you got access to those, wrap them around a tree. For if you don't want to wrap it with any kind of a wrap, but you want to protect it, you can actually buy cages that go around trees, or you can make your own out of some hardware cloth and
Yeah.
just curve it, zip tie it, cut those off the next year, fold it out, and then you can keep using it. I always make it. We do have some that I do that because we have some rabbit pressure out on the other side, and I just use some like a 36-inch hardware cloth, and
Right.
cut it a couple feet in diameter, which keeps it, they're small, they're young trees, but it
Mhm.
keeps it out a few inches away from the tree. So as that tree grows, I can keep using it. And I just wrap it, put some zip ties on it, hold it together. Then,
Zip ties are the homesteader
yes, it's a
tool
tool. Yeah, absolutely.
now.
For sure. Not the most environmentally friendly thing,
Right.
probably. It's not really a reusable plastic, but we don't mind a few little things like that, I guess. Some people don't. Some people would probably hear me say
Right.
that and go, "Oh,
Well,
I'm gonna
you could
stop
always
listening to
use,
them." So I
yeah, you could always use,
You could use
rope of
string.
some
Yeah,
kind.
you could use something's going to,
Yeah.
break down if you want. But I find that works really good, and you could reuse the hard cloth. But you can buy the cages that are just lock in. They have like clips that lock them together around
Right.
trees, and you don't have to do that all the time. But thinner bark, more delicate trees, fruit trees, when they're young,
Yeah.
they will chew them up if you
Well,
have
and
that kind
those,
of pressure.
yeah, and some of those mulberry trees are kind of designed to be ate. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so
They
that's what
love it.
I'm worried about is
They
the
love the apple
mulberry.
trees. They love
Yep.
they love all the fruit
We
trees, I
have
find.
used to give people a frugal idea is we have used locally we have a lot of coffee places, and we've actually gotten coffee bags for free. Those are burlap.
Oh yeah, yep,
Yep.
perfect. Yeah,
So,
I did a
yep.
podcast. I think it was a few years ago. It was about the time I did a podcast with you originally, and I was talking to a guy, and he lived up in Canada, and he was using burlap sacks on his
Oh yeah.
trees because it was in similar situation. So yeah, you don't have to go out and buy the stuff. You can just save stuff throughout the year, and then do that in the winter time and wrap them, and it will prevent a little bit of pest pressure, a little bit of rabbit pressure. They can chew through it if given enough
Yep.
time, but the cages can prevent that. But if it's something our urban homestead, it's not that big of an issue, but it is something we have to look at a little bit. And it'll kill
We
a
have a
tree.
local fox, so I think he's been helping us.
Yeah, there you go. He'll clean them out. Yeah, and it'll kill a tree if they get all the way around and eat the bark all the way around. The tree's going to die.
Yeah.
A little bit here and there, it won't kill it, but if they go all the way around the tree, it'll kill it. And sometimes that happens. So it's
Yeah,
something you got to.
we've lost other trees, not our fruit trees, but other trees on our property from rabbits.
Yeah, and that cage, if you put it around first, if you put the wire around it first, and then just put the mulch up to that, it kind of
Right.
keeps that mulch off the tree too. It kind of helps with that. So that's why I'm saying it's a good time to do that if you're going to
It
do that.
is.
And winter time, again, that's when you're going to get the most pressure from varmints and bugs and things like that.
Yeah.
So it's just something to pay attention to. So you do want to protect it. It's a good time to think about the protecting, the mulching. Now, a lot of people have a tendency to think, oh, well, all my fruit's gone. Now I'm going to prune my tree. It's not the best time to prune your tree until after that tree goes dormant. So uh, now I actually watched a video of somebody the other day, and they said that they prune even throughout the year in the
Yeah, I've heard
summertime.
that too. I've seen
And
people do it
I've
too.
only ever pruned in the fall, and it served me well, or
Yeah.
in the dormant season, either late winter, either early winter or late winter.
Yeah.
I will prune.
We usually prune around maple syrup time here, which is like
Yeah.
March, February, March.
Yep. I
That's when I
usually wait till
usually do it.
spring,
Yeah.
early spring or late winter. And that's when I usually prune too. Trees. We're talking about trees here. So we'll get into some other
Right.
stuff there
My
later.
fruit trees. Yep.
Yep. So that's something I do there. It's safe. You ain't gonna kill nothing doing that. So it's just safer to do it then. I don't fertilize in the fall either. I fertilize in the spring because it's really going to promote that growth when you get that fresh
Right.
injection of a fertilizer. And when I'm talking fertilizer, you can use an organic fertilizer. I usually just use compost and things like that to fertilize my trees, but I will put down a nice layer of compost around my trees in the spring. So especially the young trees, an older established tree, I generally don't do anything with it, but my fruit trees, the young fruit
Right.
trees I do. And something you and I were talking about earlier, we have some hot weather coming in over the next few days, which is not normal this time of the year, but you want to continue watering.
Right.
It's easy to think, well, the fruit's off the tree, the leaves are falling, but if you got a long dry period, continue to water your tree and especially your young trees until it gets really cold out, because it is a drier season. The fall season is generally a drier season, and it can still be a pretty hot season. So you don't want to forget to water just because they're not producing for you.
Right.
It'll just continue to be healthy for your trees and help them grow. So that's what I do for my trees. I don't do a lot, but that's what we do. Go around and mulch, put a little protection around them, and water pretty much. And then I'll prune when they go dormant. So that's trees. That's how I treat trees. Is there
Yeah.
anything you do differently?
Well, the only thing we're doing differently right now is we have a tree that we have some disease in. And so
Okay.
what we're doing is we're making sure we get all those leaves gone
Yep.
when they fall.
I
So
don't.
we don't want the leaves from that tree because
Okay.
that tree's having issues. But I mean, normally we wouldn't worry about it, but because we're having I think it's called cedar rust, because
Yeah.
it
Yep.
got it from a cedar tree that's
Hmm.
nearby. Yeah, and so we're gonna be removing those leaves
Sure.
from the ground.
It's a good point. It's a good point. I
Yep.
did mention that. Like the next thing we're going to talk about is vines, and that is an issue with like grapes and things too. So I haven't had the disease issues with my trees so much, so it's not something I've been thinking about. But yeah, it's a good point. And that would be when we're talking about vines next. That's the first thing I had on the list was clean that vineyard floor, get
Right.
the old
Yeah.
grapes that fall, get the leaves out, because disease issues with grapevines
Yeah, and this is
can be
my
a big
year with
issue.
grapes.
Yep.
This is my first year with grapes. We don't really have leaves very many. We got
Yeah.
like what 20 leaves, but
Yeah.
I've been watching videos and it was really interesting.
Yeah, we have a lot because there's a lot of grapes I just don't get to before they start falling. So we get a lot of grapes that
Oh,
fall. Those are rotting. It's bringing in pests. So it's
yeah.
inviting a lot of bugs in. You got the leaves falling. Some of them got some black spots on them and stuff. So we clean that. I always clean that vineyard floor up, get all that stuff out of there. Um, and
Do you compost those or do you completely remove them?
I generally don't. I usually get
Okay.
them out and might
Okay.
burn them in a pile or just get them on a separate pace. I might take them to a part of the property where I'm not really just lawn or something and pile them up and just kind of let them go for a while or something. You can bag them, throw them in your trash.
Right.
If they're disease issue, if there's disease issue, if it's
Right.
more like I'm just cleaning it up to keep the bugs out because you're going to get
Right.
a lot of bug pressure, you could throw that in the compost. Yeah, for
Okay.
sure.
Yeah.
But if you did see some black spots on some leaves or something like that looks like a disease, you probably want to just get rid of those. If your compost pile if you're really experienced with compost,
Right.
you're good at getting it good and hot, it's not even something you have to worry about.
Right. Exactly.
You can kill off that stuff, but I don't always pay that close of attention to my compost.
Yeah, I'm kind of a lazy composter.
Yeah, sometimes I do good, sometimes I just forget about it for weeks on end and let it just do its thing naturally. But yeah, that's the first step we always take with the vineyard. Now I will put down compost around the grapes. I do fertilize it with
Okay.
compost in the fall. And the next thing I do is something I learned. I had the vine for a few years before I started doing this, but then I started reading a little bit about it, and I always protect my trunks and my graft unions from the cold by piling up soil, not mulch.
Okay.
Mound it kind of like you would potatoes or
Right.
something. You mound up around the trunk of the grapevine, and it helps protect it. And the reason you want to use soil and not mulch is because of the pest issues, because they'll come in and
Okay.
eat. They'll work through mulch and get to your grapevine where they won't the soil as much. So that was just something I learned a few years into it, and I started doing it. It seems like
Yeah, I
it
was watching a video
insulates
of a
that.
guy doing it
Yep.
today, and I'll
Oh,
ask
really? Okay.
questions when you're done completely talking about this. I'll ask you a question to see
I
your
might have an answer, I might not, but
well, just to see your thoughts or if yeah.
yeah. Well, that's just something I do. I've seen it. Like I said, I probably watched a video on it too a few years ago and started doing it. And I would just bring a mixture of compost. I kind of work it in with the compost. I bring the compost and some soil in, and I kind of mound it. And so I'm kind of fertilizing it and doing the mound all at the same time. And then I actually mulch around that. I'll come out that with mulch,
Oh, okay.
and I do put some mulch down, but it's a little lower and it's around that. So I'm not, and that's more for moisture retention, I think, more than anything, because there's not really a heat issue or an insulation issue there. It's in a vineyard. It's got an arbor over it. It gets some protection, but I'm just thinking about moisture retention in the soil
Right.
for the grapevine. Because again, keep watering.
Yeah.
I always keep watering everything until I can't water anymore, and then you prune it when it's dormant. Again, you can actually do it in the fall if you want, or you can wait till spring, but when it's dormant.
Okay.
But what was your
Yeah.
question about it?
Well, this guy, of course, he isn't growing a huge grapevine like you are on an arbor. He had more, it looked a little bit more like a commercial orchard.
Yeah.
And he was actually pruning his back and taking them off of his fencing or his
Mm-hmm.
trellising. And he was actually burying the whole vine.
Yeah. The first.
And the trunk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How long was the vine that he was burying?
It looked to be like 5 or 6 feet.
Okay.
He
Okay.
was like basically built.
That's funny. That we're going to
trench and buried it in there.
It's funny. We're going to talk about the raspberry and blackberry canes a little bit, and that's going to be one of the things about that is burying them. But I've never done it with grapes, the whole vine. Yeah. But I have cut it back almost to ground level. The first 3 years I was growing that, I cut it down to a really small bush, and I just let it completely go again. But I got lazy one year and I kind of let it go, and I just kept the vines out there all year, and I cut it back where it was starting to get on my shed, and I cut it back right at the trellis.
Right.
And it seemed like it grew better and actually gave me more grapes that year. So every year since then, I just kind of do that. I cut it back to the trellis in my shed, and then I let it grow from there on out each year.
Well, you're getting grapes. I just
and it gives me a ton of grapes. So.
Where we live, we get a lot of snow.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, and we actually freeze pretty low.
In
So
your area, that could be something that
yeah, I don't know.
you might do. I've not had an issue, and we get pretty cold winters here, but it's
Yeah.
not been an issue that I've had as far as it killing it or anything. And all I do is bury the trunk. Of course, like I said,
And
mine's up
that's
6 feet in
protection
the air.
against the cold, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's
It,
interesting.
it covers that. You want to get it up over the Union graft there,
Right.
because most
Because
of the,
we'll freeze down, I don't know, 6 or 8 inches. I mean, you won't be able to get a
yep.
shovel in there.
Yeah, so
So,
we'll do that.
huh,
We'll cover that up. But I got, like I said, I got one huge
right.
grape trunk
Well,
where I don't have a bunch,
sounds
so
like it's really producing. So,
it works very well. Yeah,
yeah.
I get, I'm trying to just give you a comparison on like what you can imagine how many grapes I get off of this. I have these trays. They're like, what are they? A couple feet by probably 16 inches deep and a couple feet long, 2.5 feet long, and probably 7 or 8 inches deep, uh, depth wise and width wise. Anyway, there are these big trays for carrying stuff, right? And I have a whole bunch of those. My wife works for a school system. She's a manager
Okay.
of a cafeteria system. She brought a whole bunch of these things home that they were throwing away. So I use these to collect produce. And I filled up probably 15 of those with, I mean,
I hope to have that problem
heaped
one
up
day.
over, I mean, like falling off the sides, heaped up. It just, it was so, we had so many that we were like freezing bunches of them. And
Wow. I
just
hope to
because,
have that problem one
yeah,
day.
it was, and that's just, like I said, that's one big giant, I call it my grape
Wow.
tree, because it's
It
just,
basically is. It sounds like
yeah,
it.
it's got a
Yeah.
huge trunk on it. Yeah. And it's a few years old. So it was actually the first thing I planted on this homestead.
Really?
Very first thing I went and bought seeds to plant my raised beds, and I planted that grapevine, and it was the very first things I planted. So it's
Nice.
came a long way. But yeah, that's what I do with that. But yeah, I'm not sure as far as berry. I mean, well, I think it would further insulate it. It's not the reason. We're going to talk about canes next, like raspberry and
Right.
blackberry canes. It's not the reason I do it with those, if I do it. But yeah, I think it would definitely protect it. So let's move on to talk about like our raspberry canes and our blackberry canes, things like that. You probably don't want nothing to do with that, because it sounds like you guys did a lot away with a lot of those on your new
We
property.
we bought I do have a bunch of thornless
Okay,
blackberries,
yeah.
and we did buy some raspberries. So
If you
yeah,
want to, and what I try to do is I like them just to contain them in an area and have them grow the way not spread everywhere, but
right.
grow in the
Yep.
direction and the way I want them to. So this is the time of the year that I pay attention to that. And this is going
Yeah.
to determine how they grow next year. So the first thing I do with my raspberry and blackberry canes is I prune all the second year canes, which are the brown ones. They're going to be brown and look dead. So I
Okay.
go through and I prune those at ground level, cut them out, get those out of there. So you can go ahead and cut those out as soon as it stops producing. You can get those, you can get rid of those because they're dead. They're not going to produce anymore. Um, and now what I do is I go on my first year canes, and they're usually 4 or 5 feet long, and I'll
Hmm.
usually cut off about the last 3 inches of those, prune about the last 3 inches off. And the reason I do that is it kind of promotes side shoots, and they'll start getting more bushy, which will produce more
Okay.
fruit. Because you get that long vine, you'll just get the fruit kind of growing along it. But if you can get it to grow more branches, it produces more fruit. So it's just a way to get more production out of it. Now, what you can do if you're wanting to expand your raspberries and blackberries, and what I did for a few years was bury them. What I would
Oh,
do is I would lay them down in the direction I want them to go. Like say, I'm wanting to make a row of raspberries or a row of blackberries. I would lay those first year vines or canes down, cover them with either soil or mulch. Both will work. Um, if you get whatever you got, either soil or mulch, cover them up, bury them, and that's the way they're going to grow. You're going to get new shoots popping up spring right along where you
okay.
covered them.
So you
And they're
don't
just,
break it. You just kind of
don't have to
gently
break.
lay
You
it
can
down.
just lay it down, cover it up, and it
Huh.
will insulate it, and so it will protect
That
it.
makes sense because when they tip, I mean, they kind of do that on their own when they get tall enough. They tip
Mm-hmm.
over, and then another one will pop up.
Yep. So,
So
but
yeah,
this is a good way to control it, because you can pick the direction. Say
right.
you're wanting to make a row, and you can kind of control where it grows. So if you want a row of raspberries, you can lay
Right.
them down that way, bury them, and it's a good time of the
Yeah.
year to do that. And then in spring, they'll just start popping up there.
That's how my in-laws did it. They had like
Mm-hmm.
a I don't know, it was probably 24 inches wide, and it was this long row, and then they would mow around it to
Yep.
keep it
Yeah.
contained.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so you're just basically cutting off the new shoots that are popping up wherever.
Yep.
Because if you let them grow, they will spread everywhere.
Yeah.
But that will give you a nice defined row of where you want them to be if you're wanting that. Now, if you're not looking to get that, you can prune those. But I mean, quite honestly, you could cut them to the ground every year
Oh,
and get first year canes and they'd come back. I've done that. I've accidentally mowed over them before, cut them to the ground. They came back just fine the next year with first
oh
year
yeah, I can
canes.
tell you from our property. Now those raspberries are super tiny, the wild
Hmm.
ones, which is
Yeah.
why we bought actual raspberries because they're bigger. And then we bought the thornless blackberries because thornless.
Yeah.
But when we have mowed, we have been not tilling, but taking an orchard rake and trying to plant over those with rye to kind of inhibit
Hmm.
the raspberries. The runners in there, it
Yeah.
is
Yep. They
insane.
will pop up everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I said, other than just mowing them down, it's hard to contain them. And then you're not really containing them. You're just making it so you don't see them.
Right,
They're still
exactly.
spreading around. But yeah, that's what I do. And you can definitely get your production
That's good to know.
expanding, ever expanding. Like you
Yeah.
said, you can buy a couple raspberries and a couple blackberries, and in just a few years, you'll have all you want if you just know how to do it right and lay them down and grow them out the way you want them. But like I said, you can make a lot of mistakes with
Mhm.
these things and they're going to be fine. You could, like I said, mow over them and they're going to come back. Probably if they're established, they're going
Yeah,
to
they're
come
pretty
back.
hardy.
Yeah, they are. I like to continue on to the second year because you get a better fruit set. I think you get a bigger raspberry, a better fruit set. So I like to have the second year, go through the second year canes even,
Right.
not have all first year canes because you will just get a little bit more production, I think, and cut those out. And they're a little bit of work, but like I said, um, you'll get a nice crop that way. Now I consider like currants and bushes, not canes. I don't know if they're fall in the canes or bushes category. I think they're more of a bush. So I have some currants, black currants and red currants, and with those, eh, I kind of do. You can prune those when they're dormant. Same way, mulch them good and heavily. You can lay them down; they'll still grow up because they propagate really easy. Also, currants do.
Oh, do they?
Yeah, very easy. And I've got gooseberries, black and red currants. I kind of do the same thing with those. I haven't really buried them to try expanding them that way, but you can take cuttings off of them and plop them in the ground. They seem to propagate really just about as easy as elderberry. If you've ever done that with elderberry, you can just clip it, stick it in the ground, and it'll grow another plant.
Right. Yeah,
Real easy.
that's what I've seen. I
Yeah.
have figs too.
Yeah. I have the goji berry, the currants, all of these, and the
Do you put the
elderberry.
goji berry in a bush then as well?
Well, here's the thing with goji berries. I have come to hate goji berry. No, I like them. Here's what will make a gardener hate a certain plant: when you don't know what you're doing with it and you mess up and plant it in the wrong place. And
Oh yes.
kind of like you with comfrey, you have come to
Yeah.
despise your common comfrey. I have come to despise my goji berry because I planted it right next to my house.
And they'll
This
spread.
thing, oh yeah,
Yeah.
it tries to take over the world
And they
every
have thorns.
yeah, they have big, sharp
Uh-huh.
thorns that are horrible. The berries ain't even that great. They're very nutritious. They have a lot of benefits, but
Right, they do,
and
but they
and I
don't
throw them in
taste
things, but
great.
yeah, they
Yeah.
don't have a lot of taste, period. They're just not a great eating berry. So I mean, but I put them right beside my house and they just take over everything. I cut them to the ground. I actually went under the ground and dug up a bunch of the roots, even trying to get rid of them,
Oh
and then
wow.
and then planted things, pretty thick things around them, thinking, oh, that'll smother them out. Nope, them things came right back up through there and started going everywhere. I was like, this is unbelievable. So
Yeah.
I don't. The only thing I do with my goji berry every year is just try to kill it. I mean, basically,
I
I'm
have
just
two.
yeah. If
And
you plant them somewhere where they can just take over the
right.
world, they're fine. But
Yep.
beside your house is not the place for
I
that.
don't mine are not thriving like yours. Maybe it's just cold
I
enough.
had other
I
people
don't
tell me
know.
that too. I don't know what it is. I've got them on the south side of my house where it's
Is
full
it by your
sun.
grape?
No, it's
I was
not.
gonna say maybe your grape is just,
We've
helping
got
it.
I tell you what, we've got really good soil here. We've got really good soil here,
Yeah.
and things just grow really good. But it's on the south side of my house. It's getting full sun every day, all day.
Huh.
and they get plenty of water right there because they catch the runoff on my roof. Even they catch a lot of where the gutters let out, so they get plenty of water. They're just, it's, I don't know. I've created the
They're loving
perfect.
life.
I accidentally created the perfect environment to turn these things into a weed or something. I mean, it's unbelievable. And the thing is, they are great. I like permaculture. They're a great
Yeah.
permaculture plant. They are, and they propagate super easy. Like I can just dig up those runners, put them in pots, give them to people, so they can have the problem too. I do it all the time.
Share the
I
love.
share that love. That's right. So, but they're not all bad. Don't get me wrong, but I have come to
No,
wish I
it's
did
like
not
with
bring
my
them to this
comfrey.
property.
Like with my comfrey, I have
Yeah.
warned people like over and over again, and they still beg me to
I
send
I
them.
tell
I'm
you
like,
what,
are you sure you want this?
I can remember way back when you were talking about it in the front porch when you were you were planting common comfort because you got some seeds, and I was
Yes.
thinking, and I think I even mentioned to you back then, yeah, I wouldn't want that on my property unless I had a
Right.
way
It
out in the
works
field
here
somewhere.
because
Yeah.
where it's at, we mow it to control it, and that helps. But if I do not want
I
it directly
think
to our
honestly, I
property.
think if you had a livestock pasture, it'd be great to
Yeah.
have it spreading all over the place because livestock could eat it and get all the benefits from it
Right.
and let it just go crazy and they could
As
just
long
keep
as
it
it
down.
doesn't completely like I look out my window and I've got 20 acres
Yeah.
of comfrey.
Yeah. But I think if you had like pretty heavy, whatever. I mean, yeah, I think there's situations. It's like
Yeah.
with everything. There's situations where it works, there's situations where it
Well,
doesn't.
my sunchoke is that way too.
Yes. Yeah.
I
Those
planted
Jerusalem
that
artichokes will take. Yeah.
raised
Yep.
I planted that in a raised bed
Mm-hmm.
with railroad ties. There's
Yeah.
3
They'll
railroad ties.
go deep and then come up on the other
It
side.
still came
Yeah.
up on the other side. Thankfully, we mow the yard, so we just mow it over and mow it over.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I could not believe it escaped it. It did.
Yep, they can absolutely. But the
Yep.
good thing is you can mow if you're mowing around them. You're just
Right.
chopping it
Yeah.
down as it
So
goes.
it works here because we mow. We have lots of little islands and spaces where things are, which ours is by under our apple tree. So
Yeah. Some artichokes are almost as bad as bamboo. I mean, they can spread about like that.
Yep.
Not
We've
as
tried
fast
killing
growing, but
those too, and it's not happening.
yeah. There's again, as a gardener, you want to love all plants, but you can't love all plants in every location because
Yeah, and I'm
there's a
thinking, well,
place.
maybe I should take that out to the property because again, livestock, but then that kind of scares me a little bit too. So
Yeah, it can. Yeah. Now, when it comes to bushes, there's a few things. When I think about the bushes that need the most care, like I said, the currants are, I mean, they propagate so easy, they grow so easy. The elderberry can't kill it. It's doing great. I wish I could kill goji. The bush though, I think about, and I have to, in my climate, I have to pay the most attention to and care for the most are my blueberries because
okay,
we have a very neutral soil here. So
right.
I'm usually making pH adjustments in the fall for the blueberries. So I'm adding things to the soil to adjust that pH if I have to, and I have to do it 2 or 3 times a year here.
Oh
I mean,
wow.
as our soil just naturally just goes right back to a neutral soil and it will not stay acidic for those blueberries. So I do have to amend the soil a lot
Yes.
to keep my pH adjustment. So I do it in the fall, I'll do it in the spring. Sometimes if I do some pH tests, I might even have to do it middle of the year to keep those adjustments right.
Yeah,
But I
we
also,
have wild blueberries,
yeah, you live in an area where it's just, yeah, they grow naturally. They don't grow
but
wild here.
they're like super tiny.
Yeah.
So we're gonna probably be getting blueberry bushes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I do mulch. We mulch them heavily because we're trying to again care for them and take care of those. So I'll mulch those really
How do you
nice.
adjust your pH? Do you use something specific?
I do different things. Like I'll use that Job's Organics
Okay.
soil additive. It's a soil acidifier, and it's
Yep.
just like a little pellety stuff you put in your soil and kind of work it in. I'll use that a couple times a year. I do constantly put down coffee grounds around them as well. You could mulch with things like pine needles and things like that, but that doesn't do as much as you think it does.
That's what
People
I've heard.
people
Yeah.
do that, but I find that doesn't actually change the soil pH as you would think.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. It doesn't really work as
I
well
think when they're
as
green, I think it could do a lot more, but when they're dry needles, I don't think they do as much as what people think. I've tried it, didn't seem to
right.
adjust my pH at all.
Okay.
But I will put down, like I drink a lot of coffee. So I put down a lot of coffee grounds around my blueberries. It's the only place I even put them anymore because I want it all right there because I'm trying to really keep that soil acidic. And like I said, I use that Job's Organics. I'll put a link to that in the show notes It's a good product for changing the soil. It does work, but I do find I have to use it a couple times a year in our area.
Yeah, I've
Some
used some
people,
of their stuff. I think I've used their sulfur.
yeah, yep. And
Yeah.
I think this has the sulfur is part of it, because that
Okay.
does that it's aluminum sulfate or whatever. It does a lot to adjust pH. There's different things you can use, but I'll put some links in for that. But that's something I do have to pay attention to. For the blueberries, of course. I don't prune any bushes until they're dormant. But as soon as things go dormant, it's a great time if you're going to start taking cuttings from things like elderberry, like your currants,
Right.
things like that. It's a great time to get your hardwood cuttings. So I'm always thinking about that as well. But you can take those in the spring too if you don't take them now, if you don't want to care for them all winter or whatever. But yeah, it's a good time to do it as soon as they go dormant, when they go dormant. So it's something to think about there. I don't fertilize any bushes in the fall because fertilizer is going to promote green, and it might make them start. If you get some warm days, it might actually start making them bush again or something. So I avoid fertilizers and compost and things until springtime. So this is kind of a list of things to do and not do, when in the fall, because some people just think, oh, well, it's a good time to fertilize. Not for everything. Some things I don't fertilize because I don't want to promote any growth in the fall. And if you get some warm days, like I said, you might be promoting some growth, and you don't want to do that this time of the year. So that's what I do. Now, those are just some of the things I do for my bushes, my canes, my vines, and my trees. There's probably more things to do, but this has served me well so far. I think if you did have disease issues, there might be some steps you might want to take in a fall for any of these things. I think if you were battling heavy pest pressure, there might even be some things you'd want to do differently on several of these things. But it might be a good time to start addressing some of those issues. Maybe not. Maybe wait till spring. But this is what I do every year, and it's not a long process. It's not hard. It's just I get bunches of mulch and I get things I need, and I get out there and do it all in a day, really, on my property, and I can get all of my stuff set up for winter time. So that's really all I do for all that stuff.
Okay. Yeah, we have, like I said, we have the apple trees. Those are the only things we've had long term, other than the raspberries. To be honest, we've kind of neglected those.
Mm-hmm. Now, you say you're treating for rust now, or you're doing a treatment in the fall for those? Because I've always heard that you do like a foliar spray, but you do it right after they bud, as soon as the buds come on.
So, excuse me, that I am doing in the spring. I'm doing a foliar spray, and then I'm using a bunch of different soil amendments.
Okay.
That a friend of mine, I should have him on for a podcast. He's a horticulturist.
Okay. Yeah,
he's just
definitely
a major tree guy, and he loves permaculture. But he gave me this recipe, and it has really, really helped that tree a lot. But we're still struggling because the tree that's infecting it is still there, and it's something we have to work on with a neighbor.
Yeah.
But the only thing we're doing in the fall with that is I will be checking the trunk to make sure there's no pests and stuff on the trunk, but we're just removing the leaves. And so instead of we're removing those leaves for sure from the property.
Yeah.
They have disease.
Sure. Yeah.
And so it's spreading from a cedar tree that is next to a crabapple tree. And then the crabapple tree is spreading to a regular apple tree. And the crabapple, we had talked about cutting down, and we just haven't. But then my husband said, well, we should just cut down the culprit, which is the
cedar tree. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's right on our property line. So
yeah.
It's something we have to talk to the neighbor about. One of the joys of urban homesteading and
you have
homesteading
to. It's hard to work those things out, but that's
right.
That is one of the joys. But you have to deal with the neighbors and the things. And
and I don't think they'll have an issue with it. But then again, I mean, the cedar bush, it's a lot. It's actually quite a large tree at this point, and it's it's probably
they 14
feet tall, and it's kind of pretty.
Cedar rust can definitely affect a few things in the garden. It can definitely affect other things.
Both of those trees, though. Yep. And I'm not sure if the crabapple is able to be saved at this point, but it's really leaning over our other apple tree and drops all of its leaves. So we need to clean up all of those leaves and make sure they go somewhere.
Yeah, it's just spreading the problem.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything we can do otherwise. Though my apples, do have something else. I believe this isn't part of the rust problem, but I have a pest in them as well. So yeah,
Well,
yeah,
hopefully you can get that under control and get the, yeah, you were saying, as far as treating the soil, yeah, getting a healthy tree will even help it. If your trees are really healthy, it can
yeah.
really help fight off a lot of those things
Right.
as
And that
well.
was my
Yeah.
friend
Hmm.
Andrew's suggestion was, healthy trees can help.
Yep.
It has to have the tools to fight. We at least
That's
got to
right.
give it
Yep.
that fighting
Yep.
chance. And
That's a good
yeah,
point. Yeah. Keeping them trees. Yeah. Keeping them good and healthy. And I know the Dirt Doctor has a lot of
yeah, yeah,
recipes
he
for
does too.
keeping trees really healthy and putting down in the soil and keeping those trees healthy.
Right. And the crazy part is our
Yeah.
tree that we have out back on the other side of the house. Um, we don't even know what breed it is. We don't even know how old it is. It's been here forever and ever and ever. And because we actually bought this house from my husband's sister,
Mm.
and the tree was there when she owned this house. We don't even know what it is, and that tree does so well, and it's been so neglected. But this year we did fertilizer with that same stuff that he told us to, and it's that tree is just loaded with huge, beautiful apples. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I my apple trees, I have a couple that are just loaded as well, and I don't really do anything for them other than what I've talked about here, just
yeah.
mulching them.
I think it's a fruit year.
Yeah, it has been a really good fruit year all the way around.
Yeah,
But some resources. Not everybody has a good local tree guy like you do, so we can point them to some good resources. The Holistic Orchard is a book that people should have on their shelves, and you need to get it, Rachel. I know you don't have it yet, or borrow it. You
yeah.
said
I
you
read
read
it
it.
from the
You,
library, but now I
you
need
read
to
it from the
buy it.
library, so you have read it. So, but it's a good one. It's got it really has a lot of breakdown. Michael Phillips he knows his stuff. So if you're want to know about trees, he's a guy that can definitely
Yeah,
it's not just trees, berries and things too. Also, he kind of covers all that in that book. But it's a good book. I'll put a link to that in the show notes. I'll have some links to some other articles and such. um, you actually linked to a free article, an article at groworganicapples.com, and I'll put in the show notes. And that's actually Michael Phillips wrote that article,
yes, yep.
and there's a lot of good information in that article. So even if you
Yeah.
don't get the book, check out that article. It's has a lot of great information in there. So check that
And
out.
I found a series of YouTube videos with him in them that total like 3 hours long. It was like a speech
Wow.
he did somewhere.
Like a
Yeah.
playlist. Well, send me a link to that
Yeah, so
playlist and
I'll
I'll get that
send
in the
a
show
we'll
notes.
put
Yeah.
that link in there because that it was I watched a couple of them and very good information. So
Great. Yeah.
yeah.
Send that over. We'll get that in the show notes for folks so they can check it out. And if they want further study, that's the thing about being a gardener, a homesteader. The study never ends. We're always looking to learn more
Yeah.
things. I love it though. I love learning new
Yes,
things.
me
And
too.
I had a guy reach out to me this week in an email, and he was pointing out something like way early on, like I did a podcast like years ago, and he's like, you should have said this because this is an issue and blah blah blah. And I'm like, hey, yeah, he gave me a link, and I was like, I'll put the link in that podcast. I can't really go back and edit the audio. It's kind of the nature of the beast. But
Right.
yeah, I'm happy to put a link in there because you know what? Just like everybody else, I'm learning. I'm in a constant state of learning, and things I said 5, 6 years ago, I've learned some things. I've changed my
Right.
mind and
Well, oh, and that
expanded on
reminds
that.
me back to what do you call it? Currants. Here in Michigan, I don't know if it's where you are, we have to be careful which currants we get
Really?
because of white pine.
Oh, see, I don't know anything about that.
There's a disease that can spread to them. So they're so they won't even ship into Michigan unless it's
Really?
specific breed that has been hybridized to
Well, it must not be an issue
spread.
here. I bought mine from
Yeah,
Stark Brothers and they shipped it, and I
right.
never heard anything about it. So
Yeah.
either it's
Because
not
I
an issue
really
here
wanted black
or they're
currants.
the
And when I
hybrids. I'm not
started
sure.
looking into that, I
Mhm.
really wanted black currants. And when I started looking into that, I wanted to make sure that I got the right ones just because
Mhm.
we have an old growth white pine forest that's
Oh yeah.
the picture of me that you have with
Yeah.
the huge
The big
tree.
tree. Yeah. Yeah.
That's a white pine. They're like over 100 years old, and then you
Wow.
can't even put your arms halfway around them.
So they're
So
just
we
in.
want to protect those trees. Yeah. But
So do the diseases go to the white pine, or does the white pine go to the currants?
no, the current spreads a disease to the white
To
pine
the
and it kills
trees.
the tree.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So you definitely would want to be careful then. Yeah. I didn't
Yeah,
hear
but
nothing
it's
about
not
that.
all breeds. They
Okay.
hybridized certain black currants,
So,
so I
so
would have
either,
to,
yeah. So
yeah,
either they sent me hybridized ones or it isn't an issue
yeah,
here in Indiana. I'm not
right,
sure
yeah,
which. Yeah.
yep. So it's just those things that you learn when you're,
Yeah. Again,
yeah,
it's a constant ever learning process and I love it. But again, the nature of podcasting or videos or anything is
right,
you
yes,
might say something that isn't 100% everything you need, the
right.
information you need about something then, and you might learn later and you correct it or whatever.
Well, and
And
we're still learning. I mean, like today, you know so much more about fruit trees and stuff than I do because we're just getting started on a lot of this, a lot of the
yeah, and then I could
fruit
talk to a
trees.
guy like
Yeah.
Michael Phillips and he could teach me 1,000 things,
Oh, right.
I mean,
Yeah.
that I don't know. So we're again always learning. Oh, and I love to
Yep.
get the books and I love to read and I like to study, I like to watch YouTube videos on it, I love to listen to podcasts from people who know more than I do about certain things. And that's great, and that's why I love this community and I love there's competition. That's something I love about this community, the homesteading community. There's not competition with other homesteading podcasts and video makers. We're all just like trying to share information and grow the best gardens
Right.
and homesteads we
Exactly.
can. Like you were just on a podcast, I'm going on that same podcast next week. I think that's really cool that we
Right.
can do that and go on different podcasts. And I've had several podcasters on this podcast in the past. So I like to promote that, because we're all learning this together and we all have different gifts and skills that we're doing on our properties are different, so we can learn from each other for sure and
Oh,
spread that
yeah.
knowledge. So good
Well, and
stuff.
you forget, like the other thing too is even if you do not, you could have a 4 hour long podcast. I mean, Michael Phillips could come on this podcast and probably talk for 4 weeks about creating an
Yeah,
orchard.
well,
And,
like you just said
you
about
know,
those videos, there's a whole bunch of videos at 3 hours or
yeah, I
whatever
mean,
stuff.
you
And
could talk for, I mean, people actually take classes on this for weeks at a time and cover
mm-hmm.
these topics. We're
Yeah,
just kind of
yeah,
glazing the surface.
we're sparking the interest, so you will go
Yes.
further study and learn more about it. And
Which is why we put the links to
yeah,
books
that's
and
why I give
everything.
links to
Yeah.
things and we say go learn more, but I get inspired by listening and hearing
Yeah.
things and it makes me want to go, oh, I want to do that on my property, so I'll go learn more about it and then I'll implement it and then it works out great and then I get to talk about it or something, and then that's cool and I like doing that. And I think a lot of homesteaders are the same way. They want to learn more about it, they want to try it. I've learned more from just trial and error than anything,
Yeah.
like goji
Yeah.
berries.
Yeah.
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 I still love them. I mean, they like I said, they have a purpose. I just don't love where I
Right.
put
Right.
it. So
Yeah. And I have another book too that I'll put in there. It's more for berries, where I think Michael Phillips is more on orchards.
mhm.
Yeah.
He covers both in there a little bit, but yeah, he's definitely
Yeah.
into trees. Yeah.
But yeah, it's always as much as you can learn as possible. And
What's that book? You want to mention it?
it's the Backyard Berry book. It's geared more toward
Okay.
especially when it comes to the almanac, where it gives you the annual almanac. It's geared more toward like New England
Okay.
area as far as the timing, but the other information in here is really good.
Yeah, I don't have that one. That's definitely okay. Well, add that to the show notes for sure, and yeah, so people can check
Yeah.
that out as well. Yeah, like I said, I'm a big fan of books. I'm a book guy, so I love to put books on my
Right.
shelf and have them there. And some of them never get read again. Some of them get, I go to them often. So it's just, and
Right.
then most of them I give away, unfortunately.
Right. Well, and I mean, the nice part is like you can just run in and go, oh, I got that in that book, and it'll tell me what I can't
Yep.
remember what the name of that was and what I need to do. And
Yeah.
I like having them for reference.
Yeah. And I'm a big internet guy. I'll just Google stuff half the time, but I don't know. I like books too. I love to hold a book in my hand.
Right.
So
Right.
I got it a big kick there for a while buying ebooks. And so I have a whole bunch of ebooks on my Kindle. It's just not the same though. I love to hold a book in my hand.
I love a real book, and for me, once it goes into the abyss of my phone or internet land, oftentimes I never revisit it again. Maybe
Yeah.
it's because the era we grew up in,
Yeah.
everything wasn't digital.
I don't mind reading on a Kindle. I just never reread anything on a Kindle. I'll read it once and then it's, as far as I'm concerned, it's spent and I don't ever look at it again.
But I
So,
will say my kids are in their 20s and they all actually prefer regular books
yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
So
I
there's
just,
something to to be said with just
Yeah, I don't think they'll ever go away. Honestly, I don't.
Smelling a book.
Yeah,
I have a whole bookshelf back there. That's just one of many.
I got a pile of them right here that I'm always looking at, and I got a bunch in
Yeah.
my office. And yeah, same
Yeah.
way. Well, you have anything else you want to add, or
Just that. I will send you that link at the YouTube on the Michael Phillips YouTube series that I found.
awesome. Well, I want to encourage people to join the Homestead Front Porch. I've been doing weekly lives in there, and I talked about quail earlier today. Had a little 30-minute video, a live video I did on raising quail. Last week, I don't even remember what I did, something else. Anyway,
watch it.
I can't even remember what I do each week now, but yeah, doing the lives in there and every week, and you're adding a lot of videos in there, and we got a lot of people contributing to the group. And yeah, be part of the Homestead Front Porch Facebook group. It's a great group, and it's only getting better every day. So be part of that. And other than that, that's all I have. And
I think that's it. You have that. You are on Instagram. You have your Instagram page.
Yeah, everything's linked up on the website for me.
Yeah, that's true.
You just started an Instagram that we have linked up.
Yeah, which
or you kind of started doing it again, your Instagram.
Yeah, I kind of got off, and I've started adding things here and there again. Yep.
Well, you've got a lot of great pictures on your property, so you definitely, an Instagram is what you need to have, because you're all time snapping some really great pictures of your little homestead there.
Yeah, I have to. It's going to take effort to do that, since I've got like 3,000 or 4,000 pictures on my phone.
I like to say you encourage me with all your preserving and stuff, but I actually get discouraged because I'm always thinking, man, she does so much more than me. I wish I could do all that.
Well, it just appears
No,
that way.
kidding.
That's the magic of the
internet. Yeah, everything looks perfect. No, like me, I'm not sharing any garden pictures right now because my garden looks so bad.
Well, like I said, one of the joys of, I said in the podcast you're going to be on, I said one of the joys of having community is my cabbage was a complete failure this year. I got like 3 heads, but I have a friend that's a farmer, and I've created a relationship with them. So I will just call him up, and I will go buy cabbage from him, and that works.
Yep.
That's why you have the community.
That's why you have the community. That's right. And like I said, we've talked about it before. You did a great little walk around your garden video, or working in the garden video the other day, where you talked about urban homesteading, and you were talking about like, going to a farmer's market and just buying the stuff and preserving it yourself and things like that. And you were just talking about how you could really homestead no matter your situation. And I thought that was a really good little video you did.
That's what I did for years when we didn't have enough space. I found a few farmers that had things here and there. You sell cabbage, you sell green beans, you sell peaches. Okay. Yep.
You can go home and work on practicing preserving in different ways, practicing preparing it in different ways. And it's an aspect of homesteading. Are you a complete homestead? That's up to you, but it's an aspect of it for sure, that you can be honing those skills and working towards it. Yep. That's right. That's right. Well, that's all I have. So I guess we'll let these fine folks that are listening to us get on to the next thing they listen to. And so everyone, happy homesteading, and God bless. What, Rachel? You're supposed to throw out your little thing there. What is it? What is it?
Grow where you're planted.
Grow where you're planted. I see you say, I want to